Well, hey, Kindred. My name is Becky, and we are just so glad that you are tuning in today. From wherever we are one, even though we are tuning in from many different places today. In just a moment, Zach is going to bring our message from our Colossians series, and then we're going to close out as well with a song. But I just invite you, wherever you are, to simply receive the song or to engage with it together. If you want to sing where you are, if you want to close your eyes and listen, all of that is available. But we just want you to know that you are loved. You are not alone. You are seen by the Creator of the world, and Jesus loves you so much. And that is why we give God praise and thanks. In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word from the throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, oh praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering, you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake, you died. That storm was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. Then the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel shall not kneel, shall not faint, by his blood and in his name. In his freedom I am free, for the love of Jesus Christ, who is resurrected me. We sing praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty, oh praise forever to the King of kings, yes, praise forever to the King of kings.
Hey, Kindred, welcome. We are in week 2 of the great AMC exile, a period of time that will be talked about for years. I'm glad you're here with us. We are together. We are online. It's weird. It's not COVID, but it feels like it. And we got good news on that front. But first, I want to say this. If you are listening to this or watching this on Sunday the 3rd at 10 o'clock, at 11:30 today, so right after this, jump in your car, take public transportation, save the earth, I don't know, show up and meet us at Cozy Coffee, 11:30. Cozy Coffee's right up the alleyway from the AMC that we used to be in, if you remember that back in the day. And we're going to be there for a little while just to connect. If you need prayer, we'd love to pray with you. If you just want to hang out, we'd love to see you. We miss you guys. So 11:30, Lindsay and I will both be there. We're excited to see you there. Second thing, great news, is that we just have landed with a place to meet for the rest of August. So August 10th, 17th, 24th, and 31st, we will be at a place called Vista Ridge Academy. It's a school right off of Highway 7. It's technically it's 169th and Sheridan, but there's a Big King Supers right there. It's right behind that. So it's called Vista Ridge Academy, 10 a.m. We will be there starting next Sunday. So it's exciting. We only have it for August, so we will be coming up with a new long-term solution. That's what we'll be working on. Pray for us. If you have ideas, we'll take your ideas. Send them my way. If you have connections, I'll take your connections. But we are working hard on looking at what that next thing's going to be for us. Today, where we are is we are in Colossians chapter 3. And so I love this chapter. I'm excited for this. I hope that this is something that you connect to as well. This is Paul at his best. So Paul's writing this letter, Colossians, to this church, warning them about some things, trying to get them to grow in some things. And Paul is kind of in this zone, the way that his letters tend to go, where he now enters into this like practical way of loving each other portion of the letter. And that's where we get to be today. And there's more than just that. But I want to set up just a little bit. I want to talk about what we saw last week from Paul. Last week we saw Paul talk about these false teachers. He was warning the church against these guys that were showing up. They were called Gnostics. They had this whole philosophy about, actually I'm not even going to get into it, a crazy philosophy. We've talked about it before. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But the Gnostics were false teachers. Really, the thing that stuck out to me that keeps in my head is this thing called Christ-mongering that they did. And Christ-mongering, we've talked about it before, but just to remind you, it's this idea where they use kind of semi-Jesus-sounding, Jesus-y sounding things to teach people to take, but really just to take their money or to gain power or prestige for themselves. They would talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. They love to be powerful and controlling. But they didn't believe in the lordship of Jesus Christ. They didn't believe in aligning their life with him. They just wanted the benefits of what other people who were trying desperately to do that could give them. We still see this today. We see it in a lot of different ways. You can name some of them yourself, sitting in the comfort of your own home right now. It still happens. And Paul was warning them all the way back then in chapter 2 of this letter and warning us to remember that all of the things that these false teachers would have you do or give your money to, they're not the thing that is the point. The call to Jesus remains the call to Jesus. The good news of the gospel is that it's simple, right? That's what we looked at last week. That is about just Jesus and his work on the cross, about his resurrection, his defeat of death, and that all of that is available to anyone. All that's required is that we surrender to the lordship of Jesus. We try to make our entire life bend to him. So I want to reiterate this point real quick, because I had a few conversations this last week, and it takes us into today, and it's really important to me. Just because a pastor or a mentor, even a parent, whoever, told you something and said you have to do it to be saved, to be a real Christian. You must believe this thing about life or about politics that mix with your faith or whatever someone told you you have to do. Just because it was somebody who said that you respect and admire doesn't mean it's true. It's an add-on. It's an add-on. And if you add on to Jesus, it's not part of the gospel anymore. Listen, it might be true. It might be a truth. It might be a really moral thing that they're telling you that I agree with. It might even be a super holy thing to do. But if it adds on to Jesus, It's just an add-on. It's not a requirement, and it absolutely should not be a litmus test of your faith or whether or not you believe and follow Jesus the right way. Maybe that's a soapbox. I should have brought a soapbox with me. Pretend this is one. Maybe that's a soapbox. I don't care. It's important, and I really believe that we need to be right there as we go into chapter 3 of this letter. So, and I do think this. In talking that way and discussing that, the natural question that I have, and I've had this discussion with a few people this week, is, well, then how are we supposed to live then? Like, what are these instructions that we keep seeing all throughout the Bible that say, do this, don't do that? Paul himself today is going to get into some of these kinds of things. He's going to talk about, what we should and shouldn't do. And don't those things matter? And yeah, the answer is absolutely, and it's a great question. Absolutely they matter. And of course, behaviors matter, because behaviors start to tell the story of what we really believe about life, right? What we do usually follows what we believe, and how we treat people usually follows what we believe. So absolutely they matter. Theological stances absolutely matter. These things matter. They just aren't the point. And that's all I was trying to say last week. That's all I want us to be on the same page with. Jesus is the point. Jesus and his work is the point. The rest of it is time that we spend to learn and grow for the rest of the time that we're on earth. Right? We have a lot of time to figure out what we should be doing and what we should not be doing. That's not the saving faith. The saving faith is that Jesus did it all and we just surrender to him, right? We do, though. We change as people. And we, as we start to follow Jesus more closely, you start to act more like Jesus naturally, not because of some kind of rule that you followed or some kind of test that you passed, but we start to do that because our wants and our desires, they start to line up more like Jesus's when we're close to Jesus. It makes sense. We know this. Anybody who's been alive for 5 minutes knows this. Rules don't change hearts. I can't make you do anything internally just by making you do it externally. Laws don't make obedient citizens. All you have to do is drive in Colorado for 5 minutes to see that. What's a red light in Colorado? Absolutely, very close to nothing. If the light turns red, you're waiting for 3 more cars before you go on your green, right? Laws don't make obedient citizens. They sure help. It gives us order. Do I think we should abolish them? Absolutely not. But the change of a heart is not there necessarily. So, there are a lot of guidelines. And even here from Paul, these guidelines talk about what life could look like with a changed heart that craves the good life, like the kind of life that we dream about, that we've always wanted. Maybe not and very clearly I want to talk about this, maybe not materially, right? Maybe not financially or anything like that, but the kind of life of being the kind of person that we dreamed about being, having the kind of people around us that we dreamed about having around us, those kinds of things. Okay, so today, as we get into chapter 3, I'm calling this the other side of the coin, okay? Because the first side of the coin is that all of this is Jesus' grace. It fuels our ability, right, to live our life, to be saved, to be with him for eternity. And it's simple, right? It's not all these add-ons and rules. That is one side of the coin. But when you flip it, the other side of the coin, there's a whole lot of things that it says about the best way that we can live. So this is the other side of the coin. Let's get into it. Paul says to Jesus, to the Jesus follower, he says that to the person that's dedicated their life to Jesus, that's following after him the best that they can. Many of us fall into this category. He says, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, right? Where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds to things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and spiritually you died, and now your life is hidden with Christ in God. Hold on, this word hidden. It's a really interesting thing that he's doing. This is Colossians 3, that was 1-3. Now listen, this to me, this is kind of quintessential Bible moment, right? There's some kind of Bible-y sounding vague talk here of heaven, seats, and things like this that was kind of mysterious sounding. If you're like me, you read it and you kind of try to make sense of what Paul's going for right here. There's some kind of instruction. I can tell that's important, but immediately just reading it, it's not super clear to me what he's trying to say. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe it is. Maybe you're like, no, I get it. But let's dissect it. Because here's what Paul's up to. He's telling us that as a believer in the work of Jesus, as one who now belongs to Jesus, and that's what we believe here, that we belong to God and we belong to each other. We belong to Jesus. Our home now is heaven and not earth. And what's that mean? Well, it means that we're more concerned about things that have eternal consequences than what happens right in front of us. And because that's true, Paul's saying we should feel the way right now that we do maybe after weeks on the road, on a trip. We should feel homesick. We should long for things that are of heaven and not of earth. Like, especially like this summer, I took this road trip in the American South. Humidity like you wouldn't believe. It almost made my hair grow back. It was so humid. It was the hottest I've ever been in my entire life. When you enter back into the confines of our box called Colorado and you feel that dry air, maybe some people hate it. I don't know why. I felt home. I felt free. It felt great. Right? We should be homesick. We should be craving the comforts of our real home. And you can take this metaphor a lot of ways, but just think about the comfort of your own home when you're finally back in your own bed, or even when you were younger, right? When we would show back up at our parents' house from college, and there's our things, and there's our family watching TV, right? And it's like the comfort and the joy that comes with that, the care that you feel from that, the smells, the cooking of home. And I know not everybody has that experience, and so maybe this metaphor is like dead on arrival for you, but you get it, right? In this metaphor, it's eternal things that we should be concerned with, not immediate ones, like I said. So what that means here is this. The way that he punctuates this idea is one of my favorite things in all of Colossians. He says, your life is now hidden with Christ. Now, what's that mean? Like honestly, we don't talk that way these days. Like, what does that mean? Your life is hidden with Christ. Here's why it's so good and why I love it. Paul is using wordplay. Okay, he is using this word hidden, and it's a very specific Greek word that he's using to let the false teachers know that he sees what they're doing and that he has a better answer for it. See, the false teachers, they use the same word to title this book that they kept. They had a book that loosely translates to hidden or secret knowledge was the name of this book. And these teachers would invite people into these initiation rites. And the only way you could ever see their secret book of hidden knowledge was by going through their initiation. I don't know what it looked like, maybe a retreat out in the woods with a lot of yelling and screaming, but at the end of it, they gave you the opportunity to be one of them and see their secret hidden knowledge. Paul's using that same word, which I think is so good. He's making it really obvious to them. I'm hoping and thinking probably to the original listener, they would also hear this same thing, that he's saying in Jesus, we are all part of the inner circle. There is no special initiation that only a few get to have. There are no levels and tiers, right? In Jesus, the true knowledge of life is found not in a secret book, but in Jesus himself, who is no secret, who is who he says he is, who is available to all. That's what Paul's doing here. It's amazing. He's saying to the Colossians and now to us, he's saying, live in a mindset that is about the things that Jesus is about. Ascend to the higher plane of thinking about things that matter forever. So he's saying things like this. He's saying, be about giving over getting. Be about serving over being served, about being forgiving over being right all the time. Be about being loving, right, instead of judging. Be inviting instead of rejecting. And of course, I could keep going because there's so many of these different ways that we can talk about what being heaven-minded versus earth-minded looks like. And then Paul does this to really dial it in, to really give us the other side of the coin. He's not saying you're having to do anything, but we get to a place where we want to, right? Where we want to do right. We want to follow Jesus's ways. Behavior change comes as a result of a changed heart, like we've been saying, and I'm going to keep saying, not the other way around. So he says here in verse 4, Jesus is life. And the implication of this is that Jesus is real life. Everything else is a ripoff or a fake or a phony. Jesus is life. Paul writes in Philippians, and remember we studied this years ago now, but he says, to live is Christ, to die is gain. Life is found just in Jesus. Life is from Jesus. Our best way to live is through Jesus. And it's incredible what he's saying here. How does it all work? Now, he gets really specific here. Verses 5 to 7 in chapter 3 says, "Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature." This is how you get to have a mind that's focused somewhere else. "Put away sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed." All of these things are idolatry, he says. They're idols. They're something we worship falsely. He says, because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived. An implication that you no longer do. So Paul here, he lists some of the better known sinful patterns or struggles that we all deal with in life that are attempting to every single human being. Some of it's like kind of 10 Commandment level stuff, right? It kind of echoes some of that. And it can all point to the same attitude and the same dead end thinking, which is this. It's the move, it's the desire, it's the mindset of coveting. Coveting. And I mean, coveting is not really a word that we use the same way anyway that it was used then. I don't know if I ever use it in normal everyday talk. So covet in Paul's letters is the combination of two Greek words. And the words, I try not to give you too many of them, but the first one's pleon. It just means more. And the second one is aishine, which means to have. So it's basically saying this is an insatiable, unquenchable desire that somebody has for things that they don't already have, but they want. So coveting is this unquenchable thirst for more, for more. It could be an unquenchable thirst for money. And when somebody has an unquenchable thirst for money, they start to behave in certain ways, right? It might lead to theft, right? Or to compromise, or to move the goalpost on what theft is. It might move to justification of quitting things or joining things that you never would have before because it would have made no sense. It would have been a call against what God wants for your life, but it's profitable, right? You see this. It might be an unquenchable desire for prestige, where it's like a name dropping. You want everybody to know who you know. You're backstabbing or conniving to get ahead. It could be unquenchable thirst for power. An unquenchable thirst for power, it can go a lot of different ways, but it almost always ends in some kind of tyrannical, like, abuse of power, right? It could be an unquenchable desire for a lot of things, for a person. And this is where a lot of that sexual sin comes into play. A lot of these things like lust and impurity and sexual immorality, because when somebody becomes obsessed with this idea that this person could be or should be theirs, or this idea that if they were just with this person, life would make sense and it would all be figured out, or this person leaves and they can't get past it, these kinds of things lead to some really, really difficult moments. Now, our inner world, and in that case, it's a really desperate one, but our inner world, no matter which one of these things is a struggle for us, our mind and our heart, the things that we spend our time on, that we think about, that we spend our time obsessing over, these things in our inner world lead to our outer world being out of order, or if they're in order, to looking more and more like Jesus. So the pain point becomes this: if you're a person who is routinely struggling with any of these kinds of things, or anything at all, the pain point is this: at what point does that kind of life become something you no longer want, and is causing too much trouble and too much pain and too much chaos, and now you find yourself up against an opportunity to change? This is what Paul's talking about. See, he says these things inspire the wrath of God. I've heard this dangled in different kinds of churches in different ways. It's a big concept. The wrath of God, no matter how you understand the wrath of God, right? It's describing a holy, above our level of understanding even, pure retribution of anger. Like this kind of action that God talked about all throughout the Old Testament that we saw a few times. But here's the thing. This is a kind of an opportunity for us to hold up what we really believe about Jesus and about theology. Now, all of that holy, retributive, actionable anger that we see from God's wrath, all of that already fell on Jesus on our behalf. Jesus took that on the cross. Jesus suffered a brutal death because of that wrath. All of that Jesus bore already. So all sin, past, present, and future, Jesus paid for. And so when we turn our life to that, and we align our life with Jesus, when we allow him to be the Lord of our life, that wrath isn't for us anymore. This is a threat from Paul. This is just him stating what the theological backbone of this is. So when someone tells you that if you keep doing this or acting this way or not believing that God's going to catch up with you, you're asking for it, he's going to strike you down. Well, the question really is, what do you believe about Jesus? Because Jesus already paid for that. He took that on the cross once and for all. He defeated it by rising again 3 days later. So behavior change then doesn't stem from a threat from this all-powerful creator. That's not the point. God wouldn't do that. It doesn't make sense. Instead, it's this opportunity to grow, this opportunity to learn what love and light really is. Now, this is the kind of thing that's inspiring and not threatening. Okay? So note this. Paul says, you used to walk in these ways. You used to be this, but you're not anymore because you've been changed by Jesus, meaning they aren't the way you're going to walk going forward because you are following Jesus. You get to choose. And every day we choose, right? Sometimes we choose well. Sometimes we don't. And he follows it up with more. So hang with this because he's got some more things. If that wasn't enough, he says, but now you must also rid yourselves of all such things as these: anger and rage. Now listen, he's using two different words. Anger is the kind of thing that boils in you for a long time. You know, Dodger game after Dodger game. It's just like it's there, it's festering. And rage is the kind of thing that in a snap moment, you can't hold it back anymore. And then you kind of forget about it. Maybe you weren't as angry. You just like for a second got really, really mad. Those are the two things that he's kind of using there. He says anger, rage, malice, and I'm going to highlight malice, so hold on to it, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Get rid of these things. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Again, it's saying the same thing. The more we start to be like Jesus, the more we start to get these things right. Now, Paul's getting more and more specific, and here he's giving us, I guess you could call them rules. He's giving us guidelines, really, for the way that we talk, right? And they're guidelines because they help us to get better if we use them. And the key word here is this word I told you to hold on to, malice. Now, when you look at malice in the Greek, it represents, basically what it's saying is all of the darkness that a person carries. That all of the things in our own heart that births vices and sin and painful or sinful like patterns, that's the thing that he's talking about. That place that all of us have. And he's really in here saying, here's 3 really great guidelines for how you could talk to people, because this is mostly about speech. How you could talk to people and have it be like Jesus. Speech must be kind, 1. 2, speech must be pure. And 3, speech must be honest. Now, if we speak in any other way, we're being deceitful, or we're being led by anger or rage or malice, okay? So why is that right here? Why does he include that right here, right now? And here's what I think he's doing. I think Paul is using this very specific example of how we talk to each other to set up the main point that he's now going to close this section of the letter with. It's this idea that Christianity, right, following Jesus, should be a destroyer of barriers and as a destroyer of differences and not a creator of them. And the way that we talk to each other, the way we talk to people or about people, what we talk about, what gets us riled up and angry, like what we focus on, these things either create bonds or divisions. Right? We see it every day. Kind, pure, and honest speech is attractive. It bonds us to each other. Salty or mean or vile or deceitful words create divisions. It's really easy. Anyone knows how to do it. Paul writes, he says here, and by here, he means in the church, the capital C, worldwide church. He says here, there is no Gentile or Jew. There is no circumcised or uncircumcised. There is no barbarian. There is no Scythian, no slave or free. But Christ is all. Christ is all and is in all. And that's a really interesting language that he's using, right? He's saying instead of divisions, there's unity. There is nothing in the church like this. So look what's included here. Unity in the church destroys the boundary of where you're born, what your nationality is. I meet people from all over the world that I think are amazing, right? It's saying there's not Jewish and non-Jewish, there's just Christians. There's just people in the church. It breaks this boundary of rules. And this is what the talk of circumcision is. It's not something that we have to get hung up on, but it is this really specific thing where some people wanted everyone to have the same covenant, the Old Testament rules with God as they became a Christian. Because if you remember, Christianity at this time was just part of Judaism. It was like an evolved Judaism. And so there wasn't like a big difference there. They thought they were still baptizing people into Judaism in the name of Jesus, right? So they're saying these cultural, like, you have to do these things. That boundary's gone too. There's the boundary of being cultural elite. Like, that is gone. Your culture is no better than anyone else's. This is what the barbarian talk is. Barbarian, I don't even know why we still use that in the English translation. This word is really just saying an outsider, a foreigner. It's saying that no longer exists. And it's the same thing with the specific Scythian talk that he uses here. He's talking about working class people. There is no working class anymore. We're just people, right? He's saying that your value as a human being, that your gender, that your race, that your class, that your origin, that these things no longer matter. There are no differences that do matter when we talk about being the people of God. He says Christ is all. Listen to that. He's saying this really. Christ is all, which means that every single person reflects Jesus. Christ is all and is in all. Every single person. So when we look around the world, no matter what our politics tell us and no matter what the news tells us, we look around the world and see pain and suffering. When we see people dying of hunger, when we see wars that are started that don't seem to make sense, we should look at that and it should absolutely devastate us. Seeing that should absolutely break our hearts because that person is us. That person is ours. They belong to God. And then that means that if we do too, they belong to us. So Paul's saying here, any place somebody suffers, we should all feel it because we are the people of God. Here's what he's saying about the kind of life that we're called to. He says that we are called to make it our identity. Now, listen, this all goes together. And Paul sets it up with a really easy metaphor. And I love this metaphor. He sets it up with the idea of what we wear, like the clothing that we choose. And you're looking at me going, you chose a Charger shirt? I know. But what we dress tells people a little bit about what we want to be, who we are. It's got these personality quirks with it, right? It says a lot about maybe who we want to be. Like I wear my Padres gear pretty much every day because sadly that's a big part of my life. The Chargers, they beat the Lions this week. It's preseason. Might be the only one we get. I gotta celebrate. This is who I am. One of my favorite things that ever happened to me when I was back when Carmelo Anthony was a rookie on the Nuggets. I was obsessed. I wore my Carmelo Anthony stuff everywhere. I went on a business trip for my old job to Atlanta, and my friend got us tickets from his old friend from high school that worked for the Hawks. And I was sitting in this luxury box at the Hawks with all the Hawks fans wearing my Nuggets gear head to toe and cheering for the Nuggets. It was a close game. I actually won on a buzzer beater by Carmelo. Different story for a different day. But as I'm sitting there, about halftime, I'm eating their food, I'm drinking their free drinks, and somebody comes up to me and hands me 2 tickets and says, "You might enjoy sitting here a lot more." And then they kind of whisper to me, "You're in the owner's box." And I loved it. They didn't want me there anymore. They were kind, but they didn't want me there anymore. They gave me 2 seats in the 3rd row. Carmelo hit a game winner. What a day. But everything there, I didn't care if somebody was mad at me. I didn't care what it meant because that was who I wanted people to know I was, right? The same way in the 90s. In the 90s when I skateboarded, baggy clothes, punk rock t-shirts, we want people to understand a little bit about what we believe and who we are by what we wear. And this is what Paul is setting up here, right? He's jumping in this metaphor and he says this. It says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved." And listen, that's who you are. If you miss everything else today, he says you are God's chosen and you are holy and dearly loved, right? That's who you are. Clothe yourselves with compassion. This is the metaphor. Clothe yourselves. Be about this. Wear compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience. He says, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues, again, back to the metaphor, put on love, which binds them all together. It makes the outfit. It completes the look in perfect unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body, you were called to peace. And be thankful. Now listen, this is the identity of the Christ follower. There's a few things here. Compassion, as he uses it here, could also be translated as mercy. And he was really wanting the Christians to understand that they're supposed to stick out and look different than the entire culture around them. They lived at a time where there was no compassion, there was no mercy. So, for instance, animals were just there was no pets, they were kind of kicked aside. People with disabilities were seen as inferior. They were often left to just perish. The elderly were not taken care of. As their contributions to this culture and to this society got to them to where they were just cast aside and let to just kind of quietly die off to the side. There was no compassion or mercy. He said, you are to be people who live with compassion and mercy. Show people the Christ follower is different and is compassionate and merciful towards everyone. And then he does something that, again, maybe I'm a nerd, but I love. He uses another word here that would immediately signal to people something that is different is going on here. He uses this word for kindness in Greek that points back and paints a beautiful picture. So let's let this sink in. He chooses the same word that Matthew uses in his gospel, chapter 11, verse 30. It's a famous verse when he has Jesus talking, and Jesus says, my yoke is easy. This word easy is the same word that Paul uses for kindness here. Okay, so he's saying that to be kind is to be basically pretty chill. That's really what he's saying, is to be available and open to all, is to be light. The Christ follower is called to be easy and gentle and approachable and loving. Now, Jesus' yoke, his teachings that made up his platform while he was on earth, is what that means. They are accessible. They're easy to follow. They're easy to achieve. And we, Christ follower, are called to be the same. We're not supposed to be harsh towards people, no matter what they believe or who they are. We are called to be easy and gentle. And then out of that love, out of that lightness, the gentleness and the kindness, we're to let Christ rule in our hearts. Now, he's using a sports metaphor here. It's right up my alley. You know it is. You know I'm going to talk about it. This is like the other side of the coin is like the metaphor side of the coin, I guess, right? But this is the third metaphor that he uses. I think it's such just a good one. And it just makes sense for us. Christ, he's saying, is the decider of your heart. The way he said it here is let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. This word rule, he's using this word decider. It was the same word they would use for like an umpire in a sporting event. Now, they didn't have baseball, which... isn't that sad? But they didn't have baseball. But I'm going to use baseball because it makes sense to me. That Christ is the umpire of our heart. He makes the calls. The tough calls, the things that we're not sure about, that we don't get right. He makes the calls. He pushes us in a direction that is good for us. And then we have to deal with the direction that comes from it is. We have to adjust to it in the game that we call life. Like, we might argue that a ball was a strike. The replay might even make us think we were right. But when the call was made, the umpire gets the final word. And we just have to adjust to that and figure out life from there. I know metaphors break down, and maybe you're like, oh, if only life was that easy or that straightforward. And I get it. Metaphors break down. But here's why I like this metaphor. A lot can happen in a baseball game. Even if you don't like baseball, you know this is true. You're like, some people are like, nothing happens, that's why you don't like it. But a lot does happen, trust me. A lot can happen in a baseball game or any sporting event. Right, like a ball can be hit, and it can hit, a line drive can hit the base and ricochet in some crazy direction, and the bases can clear, and no one saw that coming. Baseball games all the time, you think it's over, and then something, one error, one hit, one moment changes everything. right? That baseball is crazy that way. The season's long. There's 162 games, and sometimes when you think things are going well, they change. 162 games means that anybody can win any day. The Yankees, they lost to the Rockies one time, and nobody even blinked really, because that's how baseball is. Even the Rockies can take them down, right? There's a lot to this metaphor. But here's the thing. Even when stuff seems locked in, or you seems like it's going to go this way that you think it's going to, something happens that takes it out of the norm, and it ends up in a place where all of a sudden the umpire has to make a ruling, right? Where the umpire really only has a couple of tough calls a game. There might be a ball here, a strike there. There might be a couple close plays at first. For the most part, they get it begrudgingly, I'm going to say. For the most part, they usually get it right. The umpire helps the game have form and structure and helps us figure out where we're going. Most of the time it's straightforward, but it's not always. Now listen, I think you're tracking. I think it's a really good metaphor. I'll let it go, put it aside for now. I'll come back to it someday. But for now, I'm going to put it aside. All of it points to this. On the other side of this coin, so on the one side we have simple grace, the saving truth of Jesus Christ. On this other side of the coin, we've had this set way before us. These things that we can leave behind, or these things that we can do that lead to a better way to live, to a more rich and full life. We have all these choices to make, and we won't always make the right ones. And sometimes, we're going to make the wrong ones on purpose, and we're going to sin. Sometimes we're going to make the wrong ones, and it wasn't on purpose, and it wasn't even a sin necessarily, but then we have to adjust to where that takes us. And Paul, he says that no matter what kind of life we choose, no matter what kind of things happen to us that are out of our control, he says we are still, because of Jesus, covered in a really amazing way. So the last line for today is verse 3:17. He says, after all of this, all of the negative traits and actions, all of the positive things the church could and should be, he says, and whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to the Father through him. So really it's this. No matter what you're doing, if you're doing anything, if you're at work, whether it's a career that you love and that you chose, or it's a career that you fell into and you wish you weren't there, in your relationships as a son or a daughter, a father or mother, a friend, a brother or sister, right? A husband or wife, whatever that looks like, no matter what you end up saying, whether it's kind and pure and true and honest, right? Or it's none of those things. No matter what kind of thankfulness you live under, no matter what you do, no matter if you chose the moment you're in or not, he says no matter what you do, do it all in the name of Jesus. If you do it with thankfulness and with Jesus' kingdom in mind instead of your own, right, you can't lose. If you do everything for the glory of the one that's freed us to real freedom, the kind of freedom where it says we don't have to every second stress about being or doing or saying or being the right thing, but we get to try. That's what real freedom looks like. That we're not the robotic creation of some mad scientist, but instead we are people who are inundated with love. We get to choose the moments and the growth and the way that we go. And we get to live in this peace of Jesus. And when we do, we were on that side of the coin, we choose the peace of Jesus. We choose that way. We become easy instead of difficult. We become light instead of heavy. When we let the peace of the Creator dwell in us, we start to desire a different way. And it's a way that points not to our own wants, not to our own hopes and dreams, but instead to the promises that profit us in a real way. To the things that help us to become more like Jesus every single day, even if it's just a little bit. So listen like this. As we're inspired by this kind of love and this kind of light and this kind of easiness, let's let the umpire rule in our lives. Let's play this game that we call life the best that we can. Let's try every day as we wear a uniform that's bound together with love, right? That's the metaphor. All of that compassion and mercy and kindness and humility, that love is the uniform that holds it all together. And let's do this. Let's be the kind of people that play on both sides of that coin. On the one side, we have simple grace, that the love of God as expressed through Jesus Christ, that we get to, with all we can muster up, love God and love the people around us, our neighbor as ourself. And it's that simple, and it's that kind of message that we really need to live into. But then we have this other side of the coin. And here's what it looks like. It's the side of the coin where we're striving for a better life. We're trying to put things behind us that we know lead to darkness and sin and wrath. And we're trying to grab a hold of the things that we know make us more and more like Jesus, with all we can muster, with all of the hard work that it takes, with all of the hard days and bad times, with all of the times that we see a little bit of progress and it's frustrating. We are on this side of the coin, striving and working and hoping and praying. Two sides of the coin, both of them take us where we want to be if we're with Jesus. Kindred, it's so good to be with you. I will see you soon, either today or very shortly.
All right, Kindred, so I'm going to ask you to sing along wherever you are. Let's bring this song to Jesus. I search the world, it couldn't fail me. Man's empty praise and treasures of fate are never enough. And you came along and put me back together. Now every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. And I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my fears and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. Because the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. Yes, He is. And there's not a place your mercy and grace, it won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, oh, better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, we sing, oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing, no, better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better than you. Oh, yeah. So you turn our mourning into dancing. You turn mourning into dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. We sing, you turn mourning to dancing. Oh, you give beauty for ashes. Yes, you do. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. empty garden. You turn bones into armies. Yes, you turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Kindred, so good to be together. Thank you again for tuning in and being a part of this community. Want to remind you, if you are watching this on the Sunday where we are live on August 3rd, 2025, we want to invite you over to Cozy Coffee in Westminster at 11:30 this morning, right after this. We would love to see you, say hi, and just be in community together. We hope you all have an awesome Sunday, a great week, and we'll see you soon.